Now, I may be a little bit biased, but I personally think Nihility characters are some of the coolest characters in the game. In fact, I have a whole account based just on Nihility characters in a long-running series on my channel called Nihility Only. And since the release of Nihility characters, they have got a lot of updates to their relics, their best in slot light cones, and more. And because of that, a lot of the guides on characters, specifically Nihility, are somewhat outdated. So today I want to make a guide for some of the new players of Honkai Star Rail to get an idea of what you need to build for each individual Nihility character. There will be timestamps throughout this whole video, so if you want to skip to one specific character, you can go to that timestamp. But without further ado, let's get in to today's video. Now let's start off with one of the OG 4-stars of the game. One of the first ones we ever got in Honkai Star Rail was Pela. Most of Pela's kit is going to focus around debuffing enemies and mainly their defense. So our goal with Pela is really just to increase that chance to hit the defense shred as much as possible, which is why we want to stack her with a ton of effect hit rate. And that's going to lead us in to her best in slot light cone, which is what I personally think is the before the tutorial mission starts. This one gives a crap load of effect hit rate. It gives you an upward of 40% at super imposition 5. However, this was a limited time light cone, so you could have only got this during the Silverwolf event. I don't believe there was another way to get this light cone, but if you have this one, it's really solid on Pela. Another good option for Pela, and one that I would strongly consider, is the Silverwolf signature, which again, you could only get on her limited banner. But if you did happen to pick this up, it's another solid light cone that gives you a ton of effect hit rate. Again, an upwards of 40% at max level, plus a couple extra damage increases, which isn't as important on Pela. She just really likes the effect hit rate. Now, if you don't have either of the Silverwolf light cones, the third one that I would alternately go for is the Luka light cone. Essentially what this light cone does, to sum it up quite quickly, is decrease defense by 12% when you deal damage to any enemy on the field, or you can do an upwards of 16% at max level. This is just an additional buff to Pela's already high defense shred, and pairs really well with her. Those are going to be her 3 top light cones. Now let's talk about her relics. For her relics, you're going to have one very good option, that being the Eagle of Twilight line. Pela needs a really good uptime on her ultimate to increasingly get that defense shred from it over and over again. The Eagle of Twilight line helps with this because after using her ultimate, she immediately advances forwards her turn, giving her another turn to regenerate a little more energy. Other good options can consist of pairing her with a 2-piece, such as a 2-piece Messenger of Traveling Hackerspace to increase our speed by 6%. That can be very nice. You can additionally pair this with just about any relic set. One that I like is Guard of Wuthering Snow because it reduces the damage that she takes, so it can make her a little more bulky. The same goes for Knights of Purity Palace or Longevous Disciple are also good options. Next, for those relic stats, which are going to be very important on Pela specifically, you're going to want to aim for as much effect hit rate as you can possibly get on her. On the body, effect hit rate is the obvious choice. For the boots, you're definitely going to want speed. For the orb, you can opt for HP, defense, or even ice damage boost, which is what I currently have on Pela. And then for the rope, you're going to want energy regeneration rate. For those substats, definitely focus on as much effect hit rate as you can get, upwards to a maximum of 67% if you can get it. Then you can focus on extra stats like speed, HP, or defense, just to make your Pela a little more bulky. And then the last thing I want to touch on quickly is Pela's planner ornaments, which I always suggest you go for Penacony, Land of Dreams. This is because it gives Pela even more energy regeneration rate, which, as we've already stated, is very important on her, plus more damage for all the users as the same type as her. So if you pair her with a unit like a Jingliu, this can be very good. If you need an alternative option, you can go with Broken Keel, or as a last resort, you can go with Fleet of Ageless because it does give a nice attack boost to all of your allies. And that is about everything you should need to know about Pela. Let's move on to the next unit. Next up, let's talk about Silverwolf. Silverwolf is the next character we're going to discuss here, and she's fairly similar to Pela, but in a different way. She also has the ability to reduce enemies' defense, but she can also reduce things like attack, speed, and other effects as well. Not to mention, she can literally inflict any single weakness you need on the enemy, and makes her one of the most universally used characters in almost every team. But what has changed about her relics and her light cones? Well, let's talk about it. So let's talk about her light cones first. She is essentially the same as Pela in the light cone department. She needs almost the exact same light cones, just ranked in a sort of different order. First up, I definitely go for Incessant Rain. The effect hit rate plus the damage is very nice on Silverwolf. If you didn't pick that up, you can also go for Before the Tutorial Mission Starts. As we've already established, another very solid light cone that is good on Silverwolf because she needs a lot of effect hit rate, and she can also reduce defense, so that's going to give her that extra energy. Another good option is Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat, the Luka signature. Again, further decreasing the defense of the enemy is very useful. And then if you don't have any of those three options, which if you do, I would highly recommend using one of the three there, the last option you can go to is Eyes of the Prey, just for the extra effect hit rate, which is very useful for Silverwolf. And yeah, that covers about everything in her light cone department. Not much has changed in terms of her light cones, but some things have changed a little for her relic. So let's talk about it. So currently, Genius of the Brilliant Stars is still definitely her best in slot light cone set. If you don't have the 4-piece of that, you can opt for a couple 2-pieces, pairing her with the 2-piece Messenger of Traveling Hackerspace or the 2-piece Thief of Shooting Meteor. And those are about the only alternates I would go for if you don't have the 4-piece Genius, but if you do have it, definitely use this. Then for her planner ornaments, their priority has changed a little. She came out in an earlier update before we had really good planner ornaments for her, so you used to use her on the 2-piece Fleet of Ageless, which was good for her, but definitely not the best in slot. Nowadays, her best relics are definitely going to be Penacony Land of Dreams for the extra energy regen, and then also Broken Keel. Again, giving more crit damage to all our allies if we're able to reach that 30% effect resistance, which Silverwolf can hit pretty easily if you have enough good relics on her. As for the relic stats, those really haven't changed. You still want to run her with an effect hit rate body, speed boots, quantum damage orb, and an energy regen rope. As for the priority on which you want to roll the substats, you're going to start out with effect hit rate, then you're going to want to prioritize speed, into break effect, and then either HP percent or defense percent. And that is everything you need to know to build a good Silverwolf. Let's move on to the next character. Next up, let's talk about Sampo. He is another one of the OG 3 Nihility characters that has become really reliable over time in primary Nihility comps that focus around using characters like him and Kafka to do a ton of DOT damage. Now, he is another character that has had a lot of changes to his best in slot relics, light cones, etc. over time. So let's talk about it. Now, I did say that his best in slot light cone has changed, but to be honest, it really hasn't. It is still Good Night and Sleep Well. This one has been really huge for him for a long time and is still just as good as it ever was. This is because its set effect is just so overpowered. For every debuff the enemy has, which Sampo applies a lot of debuffs, you're going to increase your damage by an upwards of 24%, which can stack up to 3 times. And you'll notice at the bottom here, it says this effect also applies to any DOT. This makes it really strong on a lot of Nihility characters, which we'll touch a little more on later. But that is Sampo best in slot. The ones that are going to follow that are honestly not as good as Good Night, Sleep Well, but they still do the job. Eyes of Prey is another good option. It just increases DOT and effect hit rate. Another really solid light cone. You can follow that with Solitary Healing. This one again increases DOT damage and gives Sampo a little bit of break effect, which he can use very well because Sampo does happen to break a lot of enemies. If you don't have any of those 3 options, you are kind of limited, but you can buy Fermata in the shop because this one does give you some extra break effect and increases your wind shear damage by 16%, which can be very nice. That being said, ignore all of those. If you have Good Night, Sleep Well, use this. Let's move on to his relics. Now, Sampo is a character who, with the new update, got a new best in slot relic set. Of course, being the Prisoner in Deep Confinement. This is by far his best in slot relic set, and you'll notice a common theme for the rest of the characters here. That will be their best too. But for Sampo specifically, it's very good. For every DOT we inflict to the enemy, we just ignore 6% of their defense, which is super OP on a character like Sampo with the amount of DOT he inflicts. So I highly recommend this set if you can grind it. If you can't, there are a couple good alternatives, like the Eagle of Twilight line can be a decent 4-piece for him. Mainly the 2-piece I like more, and then you can maybe pair this with a 2-piece Messenger or a 2-piece Musketeer of Wild Wheat as well. Next, for his planner ornaments, he has also got a new best in slot set with the Firm Mount Frontline Glamoth. This one is really solid on him because of the extra attack percent, and as we know, DOT scales off attack percent. Also, if we have higher speed tiers, either 135 or 160, we can deal an additional 12 to 18% damage, which is really nice. If you don't have that set yet, I also recommend a set like the Pan Cosmic set can be very nice. Space Sealing Station can be good as well because of the extra attack increases. And then if you don't have any of those and you're really struggling, then you can also go for Fleet of Aegis for the extra attack increase to all your allies. And that's about all of Sampo's new best relics. Let's talk about the stats. So for the stats, not much has changed. You're still going to want either effect hit rate or attack percent on your main body here. Your goal for Sampo is try to get at least 67% effect hit rate. So if you haven't hit 67% on the little substat here, then I recommend going for effect hit rate body. If you have, go for attack percent. Next, for the boots, you're either going to want speed or attack percent. You can go either or, but I tend to prefer speed. Then you're going to want a wind damage orb paired with either an attack percent or an energy regeneration rope. Then for your substats, you're going to want effect hit rate followed up by speed and then attack percent on Sampo. And that is about everything you're going to want to build the perfect Sampo Koski. Let's move on to the next character. Next character, Luka. Luka is a physical character who mainly focuses all his damage around inflicting bleed on the enemy with his skill. His skill is the focal point of his entire kit. He can deal up to 120% of his own attack, which additionally inflicts bleed on the enemy. And your goal with Luka is try to stack as much bleed as possible on the enemy to do as much DOT damage as you can. This obviously pairs well in a lot of DOT comps, which pairs characters like Kafka, himself, and Sampo together, which we talked about when we mentioned Sampo. Now for his best in slot light cone, I mentioned this last time and you're going to see a commonality between a couple of these next few characters, but Good Night Sleep Well is again the best in slot for Luka. This light cone is again really OP. I don't want to sit on this for too long because I did just talk about it when we mentioned Sampo, but again, really good light cone. This is going to be your best in slot. And in fact, the order of priority on your Luka for light cones is going to be the exact same as Sampo. Good Night Sleep Well is going to be the best in slot, followed up by Eyes of the Prey, followed up by Solitary Healing, followed up by Fermata. It's going to be the exact same priority that Sampo was. If you have Good Night Sleep Well, use this. If you don't have that, you can opt for any of those 3 4-stars / 5 stars that I have recommended. They are all pretty solid on him. For his relics, it's going to be a lot more of the same. His new best in slot relic set, believe it or not, is again Prisoner in Deep Confinement, increasing attack, increasing DOT. You love all of this for Luka. That is going to be followed by a little different than Sampo. It's going to be followed by Champion of Streetwise Boxing because of the extra physical damage you get and the increase of attack, which can be very nice for that extra DOT damage. If you don't have either of those 2 4-pieces, you can opt to go for some 2-piece 2-pieces with a 2-piece attack percent set plus either a 2-piece champion set or a 2-piece messenger set. Then for his planner ornaments, again, same as Sampo, he got the new best in slot set with the latest update, which increases attack by 12% and then an additional 12 or 18% depending on your speed. This is again another best in slot for the obvious reasons. If you don't have this set, you can either follow that up with a pan cosmic set for the extra effect hit rate, or the space sealing station for the extra attack to do more DOT damage. Honestly, if I could record this again, I would put Luka and Sampo in the exact same category and just have them be together, because again, the relics are almost the exact same in terms of the stats you want on them. For his body, you want either effect hit rate or attack percent. Your goal again is to get upwards of 67% effect hit rate, followed by 134 speed, followed by any attack percent you can get. And that's why you want speed boots, physical damage orb, and an attack percent rope or energy regeneration, but you don't need that as much on Luka as you do other characters. As for substat priority, it should be kind of set in stone, but you want effect hit rate, followed by speed, followed by attack percent. No, in order to build the best possible Luka. So let's move on to the next character. Next up, probably the most unique and interesting and my personal favorite among all the Nihility characters is Welt. He has probably the highest potential damage out of every single Nihility character and plays his role of debuffer better than almost every other Nihility character because of his ability to slow, because he is an imaginary character. This is really big when trying to limit down the enemy's turns while increasing your own turn frequency. He is very flexible and can be used in a lot of different team comps, and he's actually another character who hasn't changed much since the beginning of the game. So let's talk about it. In my opinion, his best in slot light cone is definitely going to be in the Name of the World because of the additional damage it gives Welt and the effect hit rate, attack percent. It's just overall a very solid buff for Welt and his own personal damage. I would follow that up with Incessant Rain because again, it's just a lot more personal damage. You get a little bit of crit rate on there too, which unlike other Nihility characters actually really helps Welt. Obviously, not everybody is going to have either of the two 5-stars, so some good 4-star options could be, again, most commonly, Good Night Sleep Well because of the additional damage it does with DOTs, or you can also go for We Will Meet Again, which is the Battle Pass light cone, which again increases your own personal damage based on your attack. Those are the two 4-stars I would suggest most highly for him, followed of course by either of the two 5-stars, but definitely most highest is in the Name of the World. Next up, for his relic set, it's pretty simple. He's had the same best in slot relic set from day one, which is of course the Wastelander set. This is definitely his best in slot set and the one I would recommend most highly. If you don't have that, you can do a bunch of different 2-pieces, like a 2-piece attack percent with Musketeer of Wild Wheat, paired with a 2-piece Wastelander. You also have an interesting choice here of going for 4-piece Musketeer of Wild Wheat because of the additional speed and basic attack damage it does give to Welt, and sometimes Welt is using his basic attack. Doesn't happen too often, but it can, so you can also opt for this 4-piece as well. As for the planner ornaments, you have two options here. You can either go for the space sealing station. This has been really good for him since day one because of all the additional attack. If you don't have that, however, you can go for the pan cosmic set because effect hit rate is again very important on Welt, and you do end up needing quite a bit of it on him, though less than you would some of the other characters which we've talked about previously. Welt, I would say, only needs somewhere between 30 and 40% effect hit rate, so usually with his substats you want to actually go for a crit rate body instead of effect hit rate. Then for his boots, you're going to want speed, followed by imaginary damage on the orb, and then either an attack percent or energy regeneration rope. For those substats, you're going to want to prioritize effect hit rate, followed by crit rate and damage, followed by speed, followed by attack percent. He is probably the only Nihility character that you actually want to build crit stats on. There's not a single other one like him, so make sure to build those crit stats on your Welt. With that all being said though, that's everything you need to know to build a good Welt. Let's move on to the next character. And our second to last character is Guinaifen. Guinaifen is a very unique character. She is unexpectedly a really good support character considering she's a 4-star, and her debuffs are the main center around that. She gives this one debuff called Fire Kiss, which is very powerful. Essentially what it does is basically just increases the damage all of your team does up to 7%, and you can stack this effect up to 3 times on any enemy for a total of a 21% debuff on the enemy. Guinaifen is powerful. But how much has her best in slot relics and light cones changed? Let's talk about it. For her light cone, this is gonna sound excessive, but again, her best in slot is Good Night and Sleep Well. This is an overpowered light cone. I don't have to reiterate it anymore. This is her best in slot, followed by, again, Eyes of the Prey for the extra effect hit rate and DOT damage that it does. Again, she basically has the same priority as Sampo and Luka. The only difference is that I actually like In the Name of the World for her. This is because she actually does a little bit more damage than both Luka and Sampo do, and I like my explosions to do big damage. Also, the attack and effect hit rate is just super nice on her. But other than that, again, very simple light cones, very easy to build up either of those two on her. You can also opt for Fermata if you don't have either of the two that I named previously, because this one is buyable from the Memory of Chaos. Next up, let's talk about her relics. Again, surprise, surprise, her new best in slot is going to be Prison in the Deep Confinement. Because she is a primary DOT character, this is going to be her primary set. If you don't have this 4-piece right here, you can go for a bunch of different 2-pieces, like the 2-piece Prison and the 2-piece Firesmith. You can go for 2-piece Messenger or 2-piece Musketeer. Lots of good 2-pieces that can work for her. You can also opt for the 4-piece Firesmith. This set has never been really good, but it can work on Guinaifen. Although I do strongly recommend just going a bunch of 2-pieces or getting the Prisoner set if you can. Next up, for her planner ornaments, again, same as almost every other DOT character, her new best in slot is going to be the Klamath Iron Cavalry for the attack and damage increases. You can follow that up if you don't have that with either a Pan Cosmic set for the extra effect hit rate, because you do want quite a bit of effect hit rate on her. If you don't have either of those sets, you can go with a Space Sealing Station for the attack, and then the same thing with Fleet of Ageless, you get a little bit more attack. Those are all her best in slot planner ornaments. Now let's talk about the set effects you need. For her relics, you're going to want either attack percent or effect hit rate on the body. Uniquely for her, she actually prioritizes attack percent a lot more than most other characters because of the way her kit works. So in most instances, you are going to want to run attack percent on the body, followed by speed on the boots, fire damage on the orb, and then attack percent or energy regeneration on the rope. As for her substats, you're going to want to prioritize attack percent, followed by effect hit rate, and then you can either go for speed or break effect. I actually don't mind break effect on her because her abilities target more than one enemy. She tends to break the enemy quite often. And yeah, that's about everything you need to know for Guinaifen. Another very simple character to build that got a bunch of new good relic sets in the newest updates. Anyways, let's keep moving on. And we're going to be moving on to the final Nihility character of the video, and probably the best one, maybe competing with Welt. It's Kafka, the best DOT damage dealer in the game. She does it all. She is the one who is triggering all the DOTs with her traces, and she is an absolutely broken character. Now, what has changed about her? Well, let's talk about it. Firstly, for her light cones, not much has changed. Her best in slot is still the same best in slot as she's ever had, being the Patience is All You Need light cone from her limited banner. If you don't have that, surprise, surprise, the follow-up to that would be Good Night Sleep Well. And then you also have the options of Fermata, which is specifically good for her because of the extra break effect, and then the increase of shock and wind shear damage. I also personally like the option of Solitary Healing, which can be pretty decent for her. And you get like a free S5 of this as well, which gives you upwards of 40% break effect. And then also 48% increased DOT damage for 2 turns, which can be very nice. Those are going to be her best in slot light cones. Not much has changed there. You're still going to really want her signature because it's crazy good. Increasing speed, increasing damage. I mean, this light cone is absolutely overpowered. But if you don't have that, you can always go with any of the alternatives, which I've named. Next things next, why don't we talk about her new relic sets? Her new best in slot relic set is definitely going to be Prisoner in Deep Confinement for the extra attack and DOT. This gave Kafka a huge buff when it came out, and I highly recommend getting this for your Kafka. And actually, I prioritize getting this set for her over any other characters on your team because she probably needs it the most out of all of them. If you don't have that set yet, and you might not, you can opt for a 4-piece Band of Sizzling Thunder for the extra lightning damage. Of course, you also have the options of a bunch of 2-pieces, like the 2-piece Prisoner, mixed with a 2-piece Band of Sizzling Thunder, mixed with a 2-piece Messenger if you need the extra speed. Next, for her planar ornaments, again, the Fur-Mount Glamoth is going to be her new best in slot set for the extra attack based on your speed. Then, if you don't have that set yet, you can also go for a Space Sealing Station for, again, a lot of attack. Those are going to be her two main ones that I'd recommend the most. If you don't have either of them, you can opt for Talia Kingdom of Banner Tree, but I don't like this one nearly as much as the other two, but it is a viable option. Now that we covered what relics you need for her, let's talk about the stats you're going to want. For her stats, you're going to want attack percent on the body for sure, followed by speed or attack percent on the boots. If you already have 136 speed, I recommend attack percent, but if you don't have 136, I recommend speed. Planar Sphere, you're going to want lightning damage, and then the rope, you're definitely going to want attack percent. Very simple, easy to build character, can be very solid with the right relics, and that's why it's important to also get the right substats on her. For those substats, you're definitely going to either want to prioritize speed or attack percent. Just try to get to 136 speed, but also prioritize attack percent where you can. And then after that, if you have enough attack percent and speed, you can go for a little bit of effect hit rate, although she doesn't need it as much as characters like Sampo, Guinaifen, and Luka. She can still use it. And then if you already have all that, then I guess you can go for crit stats to build a crit Kafka, which is kind of funny. And yeah, that about covers Kafka and every single Nihility character. We've covered them all in this video. I hope this video helped you guys build your own Nihility characters, because they have changed a lot and will probably continue to change. So we might have to make another video like this. But for today, that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm going to see you all in the next one. Peace.